5, 4, 3. Oh, let me find the mouse. 5, 4, 3, 1, and blast off. Welcome to the 100th episode of the Korea podcast. I'm your host, Jack, located in Ulsan, South Korea. I'm joined today by Chris Wards, another expat dad who's here, come along from all the way from Canada, Calgary. Is that correct?
Correct.
Brilliant. So he's joining us today for a little chat. And I noticed somebody's already in the chat here. There's the pondering professor going, yo, let's go get this party started. It's starting. So the Korea podcast is a podcast about anything and everything that deals with anything and everything about South Korea, living, working, and all the other good stuff. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to bombard Chris with a bunch of questions about his life, how he got his legs here, started himself in South Korea, how he came to Korea, and his life in general. And we're also hoping to do a little bit of ranting about, expat father and family men ranting in South Korea, because that's always fun to do. And that was kind of the more recent topic of the past few podcasts here. So yeah, welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored. 100 is auspicious.
Yeah, I know, man. It just crept up on me when I was today just editing or changing making some adjustments on the thumbnails and realized, holy mackerel, it's 100. So that's cool.
Well, congratulations, Jack. I think that's in order.
Thanks. Can't believe it's been that long. Yeah. I still got to make some changes on, I don't know. I'm hoping to get this podcast eventually somewhere on an RSS feed and get it up onto some Apple podcast or something of that sort, because there was a few comments who said, some people said, it's great, but I'm not watching your stuff because it's just not something I do on YouTube. So if you were on a proper podcast provider, then I'd be game. So one day.
Big times. Got to get to the big times.
Yeah, right. And I guess a lot of people I don't know, I totally dig it, because when I drive, for example, sometimes I like to listen to interesting podcasts. I'll tune in and it won't be through YouTube. It'll be through something that's less data consuming. I don't want to be driving and having a screen blowing up on my phone. But if there's a sound file, that always works a lot better.
But on the other hand, personally, I find almost all my podcasts through word of mouth. And then in that sense, I guess having a convenient portal is always good. But not just because you're not on some top so many 100 list or whatever, it doesn't mean you're not accessible. So
yeah, I think it's just the convenience of having it on a sound file rather than on YouTube, because YouTube you're forced to have the video as well, and some people just don't really care to see my ugly mug or it's just the conversation is what matters, right?
Fair enough.
So, I posted your bio underneath the video, and it's brief and it's there. But maybe you would like to give us a go at your experience, your life here in South Korea. Yeah, when did you come to Korea?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I came in 2012, so it's coming on 8 years, almost 9 years. That's kind of crazy to consider.
Almost a decade gone by, huh?
Yeah, I did a master's degree kind of later. I didn't jump into it in my mid-20s. I ended up doing a master's when I was 29. So, and it was in English literature. So my very employable degree. So, I needed, I came home and it was kind of I've been here, done this. And I wasn't interested in going into an office situation. So, yeah, I don't even know how it came about, but I think I was looking at Japan and Korea and kind of measuring the merits. And, and somehow I ended up there, because how different would things be if I had ended up in Japan?
Right.
But as it was, I came there and I started at a elementary school. So I went into the EPIC program, which yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. So I was in a public elementary school and kind of doing that thing, and I did that for 2 years in the same school. And like, man, I went from like nothing, like no, very, no teaching skills per se,
Mm-hmm.
but I did take it seriously. So I like became a student of teaching, and then obviously like developed my skills. And yeah, by the end of the 2 years, I was like, totally comfortable. Um, Having goals for the kids and like really taking ownership of it. But man, those first like few months, they just throw you in the deep end.
Yeah.
Uh, but so I came to like it basically. Like I liked, you know, being in charge and making impacts on children. As much as you might expect, or like you have to check your expectations, I should say. And then yeah, so I mean, that was all that. And then that's when I met my wife too. In those first few years, we started dating, and once those 2 years are up, I think basically my then girlfriend was the reason I stayed around
Mm.
in Korea. As it is.
I think that's
It's
a
always
story for a lot of us here, man.
it's always the girl.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, we met through friends and stuff, and
Mm.
it was good, and we got kind of serious. And actually, funny thing, I so they set you up in a one room place,
Mm-hmm.
like as I'm sure people may or may not know, they give you a place, the school does, and I was in a one room place, and yeah, like I think for about 8 months, my then girlfriend was living with me in the one room, and I had a dog,
Right.
a little Boston Terrier.
Mm.
So that's like
Tight
it's.
confinements, man. That's you get to know somebody pretty quickly that way.
But what I learned was what I well actually I think I learned this when I did my master's in Scotland. But what I learned was that like I don't need a lot to have satisfaction and be happy. Like
Mm.
obviously I grew up lucky, like pretty affluent parents, big house, lots of leisure activities,
Mm.
hockey, skiing, the whole bit. But paring that away and just finding, like a life pattern, like I found I didn't need a lot. And so it wasn't I wasn't cramped like emotionally.
Mm.
It was so it worked out. And then actually because we knew we wanted to like live together and be serious, we we sort of had to get married to get the okay from the parents.
Right.
So we ended up in Vancouver, where my sister lived at the time, and got married in her backyard,
Nice.
with sort of small guest appearances, like just kind of a pretty intimate thing. And that kind of sealed the deal so that we could go to her parents and say, okay, we're gonna live together and all
Mm.
this.
Mm.
Yeah, and then we started making plans, and one of the plans was like my wife is a piano teacher,
Mm-hmm.
so she was education focused, and she was just like, we can go, we can lean into this English thing. I mean, you said you like doing it, and all your kids have always said they loved you and thought you were good and all this. So we started just doing like in-home tutoring stuff. Like I'd get small groups, and I'd go into the house. Mom and dad would be in the room over. I'd have like, flashcards and like my laptop, and we'd be doing songs and stuff. Just young elementary kids.
Right.
And we did that for a while, and that paid the bills, believe it or not. Like it was tight that first year when we were married. But eventually we borrowed a bit of money, and we opened up the gyeoshipseo,
Mm.
which I don't know if people are aware. That's basically like um, the owner has to be the teacher, and they can't hire anybody.
Yeah.
And so it's not that common. It's a little bit different than like the study rooms or Gyeongbokbangs that you hear. Like it's a little bit of a different arrangement, but it's similar to that.
Yeah. Maybe since we're on that topic, maybe you can run past us. We've done it before, but it's been a while since we like talked about the distinction between hagwons, gombobongs, and gyeosipseos. By the way, just hey, Alaric, the pondering professor is Alaric, who is a prof at one of the universities. I forget which one, big one, because he's a smart dude. And he was on a podcast last year, I think, a couple of years ago. He swung by to say hi. So yeah, thanks, Alec, for stopping by. Yeah, if you could just mention the distinction. Like I said, we talked about it before in the podcast because it was like, very much Hagwon and ESL directed. But what is the difference exactly between Suwon Science College? There you go. What's the difference between a Gyeongbokbang and a gyeoshipseo?
Well, okay, so like obviously I'm not like the government official, but the Gyeongbokbangs are generally run in people's houses, in like an apartment in their spare room or whatever. Or they might rent like a small one-room suite and then run the academy or their Gyeongbokbang that way. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but whereas the gyeoshipseo, you actually are kind of renting a commercial spot. But like the tax structure and the business structure are very similar. So the owner is the teacher, like that. Whereas the Hagwon is like sort of a proper business. And
so the gyeoshipseo is you can't run it outside of an apartment. You have to rent an office space, so to speak, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's like a step up from a Gyeongbokbang, midway between Gyeongbokbang and the Hagwon, kind of, right?
I suppose, but I get the sense that it might just be like a different box on the same sort of application form for the Office of Education. I don't think it's a huge distinction.
Well, I don't think you're not entitled to hire people, right? Like I think you said you're the only person teaching, the owner teaching, right?
Correct. So that aspect actually has a big, well, I mean, it defines the business, but like there's the knockdown effect is that the business is very much me. So like a lot of guys will start like this kind of way and they'll be teaching or whatever, but then you get to a point where you want to step back and maybe you can hire some people or whatever, but like almost all my students, they're sort of invested in me,
right?
And if I just sort of swapped in another guy or gal, I think it's a much different proposition for a lot of my students' parents,
right?
So that's kind of a strength in some respects. I probably have more loyalty and leeway, but on the other side, it's kind of trapped me in this.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to somebody who talked about that precisely and basically said if you wanted to scale up, if you wanted to grow a business in terms of, a Hagwon ESL business, then your clients need to be, you shouldn't be the center of attention. You shouldn't be the apple of the eye, or the apple. What is it? The apple of the eye, because like you said, people rely on you being there, and then if you're not, then it's almost like the entire structure kind of crumbles. So it's better to have the content being the main driving factor for the business or the clients rather than the person.
You're just like you're poking holes in me here. You're seeing.
No, because we've done the same thing. Like we've gone through Gyeongbokbang. We didn't go through the gyeoshipseo. We did a Gyeongbokbang, and like if I wasn't there, then there was no classes, and then there wasn't an income, right? Right now, with the Hagwon that we have, I still teach, but I'm able to not be like, okay, we're at the Hagwon because of this dude, because of Jack. So.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that's how it's been. Like if I had to do it again, I might make adjustments that way. But like back then, like this is for 2016, 2015, late 2015. Like we were just going on the fly. I mean, like I knew English, and my wife knew how to sell. Like she kind of knew how to talk to parents. Like she had been doing piano stuff. And so she knew how to massage the parents and sort of communicate what we were offering.
Yeah.
And I did have like an image, like we tried to be this kind of upscale type of thing, leaning on my master's in literature. So we did like a lot of essay focused stuff.
Yeah.
And so we had like that going, but it just kind of, it's Chris, it's me. So
Yeah.
we could have done it. We could have done it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's like for us, it took us a while as well. Initially, when we opened up a Hagwon, even during the Hagwon, it was still me. Like I was the only. We were hiring mainly full-time Korean teachers, and then some. I think maybe one or two part-time expats. Uh, and so I was still kind of the face or whatever, Jack, But then over time, I think it just takes time for the business to grow, for the school to kind of develop a name in the neighborhood. And as the business grows and the name of the school grows, you can slowly kind of step back and be less of a attention center of
Yeah,
attention.
well, just like on that, I think we've had several points of like inflection where
Mm-hmm.
like we could have definitely moved up, upscaled, expanded,
Right.
but honestly, Jack, it's such like a sweetheart little deal I've got going here. Like I don't need to be that ambitious. Like the overhead is insanely low.
Yeah.
It's just like a little place we're renting. It's just me. Like my labor is the income, and so like there's no payroll. We don't even have a bus. Like
Yeah.
kids walk here.
Sure.
And it's just such a little kind of sweetheart thing that like tampering with it. And we've looked at it, and it's like, okay, we got to hire a guy. We got to get him a place. We got to
Yeah.
like vet them, and then we need backups. We need substitutes. Like it just kind of becomes this long list. And I'm sure in the final analysis you can get like a smooth running ship, but like the prospect of getting there and throwing away this kind of really nice kind of sweet thing we had going,
Mm-hmm.
like we've said no like two times, we've come to that point and turned back. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, totally. For like, if you wanted to move up to a hog one, you definitely need to consider that it's a very different kind of animal. It's a lot more work. And initially, I think the benefits, um, for the most part, I think the work outweighs the benefits. Like the benefits come in a little bit later. So initially, when you open up Hagwon, it's a lot more work than it seems, worth it, to be honest. But yeah, it
Yeah.
takes time. Our like one of our we had our first franchisee open up here, and she did fabulously. Just because we've like if you open a franchise, we already built up a name. So when she opened up in a second area location in the city, she had business flowing in immediately, and she did very well. But that's because we were kind of already working on the name for a significant amount of time.
She rode your coattails.
Yeah, yeah, she wrote, well, not our coattails, but I mean the franchise coattails, but so
Well, you broke ground in the community.
kind of, I guess. Uh, the pondering professor is asking us a question here. Let me read it out. Interested to know what you guys think on the new legislation that puts Hagwons in an unfavorable position, plus decrease in students due to the aging population.
Jack, I'm not up on the legislation per se,
Neither am I,
but
to be honest with you.
um,
There's a couple of things that brushed past me in terms of I don't know. Somebody mentioned that the government was asking people to or asking Hagwons to charge less, but I don't know what was implemented. My wife hasn't really mentioned anything to me, and she's the one like with the finger on the pulse in that area. Um,
I know, like Seoul kind of holds undue sway. Like a lot of rules are for Seoul, but they're not for the rest of the country.
right.
And like, and things get out of hand in Seoul first, so the government tends to clamp down there before anything. But yeah, but like on the aging population one, like I don't know about you, Jack, but like I really feel like obviously education is a pretty saturated market,
Hmm.
and like, and this is kind of, oh, he might have had an answer here. Unfair for poor students, therefore lower prices.
Yeah.
Oh, that was what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, firstly, like Jack, I don't know, like, isn't it kind of a shame that education has to be so privatized in
Hmm.
Korea? Like I mean, I'm participating in it and I'm making a good living. I
Yeah.
like to think I'm giving a good service. But the Canadian in me is like, it's an utter shame that like it's the burden is this high on parents. Like that's what I think
Yeah,
personally.
but I mean, this has been around for a long time, way, way before we came around, right? It's not like Hagwons just jumped out. I mean, what is it? Gyeongmbokbangs were the original Gyeongbokbangs were run basically by Korean teachers teaching not only English but maths and sciences and everything else, and it was just basically Korean teachers walking around from house to house, delivering like in person personalized lessons. And
Yeah.
then somebody kind of I don't know, again, legislation changed somehow, I think, or whatever happened, and somebody jumped on the wagon and decided to open a proper Hagwons, right? So like I don't know, in Korea it seems people were always willing to pay hefty dollars
To
for
get an edge.
education. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I don't know, Korean education. I don't know. It's it's touted as one of the best ones in the world, but I mean, without going into specific details and uh, turning into a negative discussion, there's plenty to be. There are plenty of instances of people, kind of sharing sentiments that are in the opposing direction to what many people seem to believe about Korean education.
Well, I don't know. My wife always says like, uh, you know, Korean graduates are in the top percentile for math scores, but they've never had a math Nobel.
Right,
Uh, Her point being like the sort of rote learning versus
right.
exploratory independent learning, which is
Precisely my point. Yeah.
but I don't know. It's like in Canada, like the private schools are for kids who are struggling.
Mm,
But to the pondering professor's point, the private schools in Korea are for the rich, like already, good studying, like getting good scores students. Like they're trying to go from 95 to 100.
yeah.
Yeah, so but like on the aging population, I was going to say that like so it's like a very saturated market. Like even in my neighborhood, there's like four or five English academies like right here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I really feel like the way I position myself is that they're really not competing with me. Like they're offering like one of them does like computers, like a program thing.
Right.
Another one's focus is like they have a library and they're studying like books and stuff, like story stuff. And like no none of them are kind of offering what I'm offering.
Sure.
And I don't mean that on a high horse or anything. I just to say that like shrinking population, et cetera, et cetera. From my perspective, like the authentic Wanamin teacher, like with meaning sort of native English speaker,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is always going to have is always going to be in the higher tier of the market. And so we're not the ones who are necessarily going to feel the pinch if for example there's a drastic drop in population in the next
Right.
5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Alaric says university intake is at an all-time low. Seriously, too low. The bubble will burst. Need to start popping out babies or kids. More education is not necessarily better education. Yeah, that's true. The one question I have is, you know, uh, the pondering professor is saying that university intake is at an all-time low, but at the same time, I keep hearing people telling me that graduates, recent university graduates, are unable to find employment. So, what is the point of having more kids entering university when they finish university and are unable to find jobs? And at the same token, I was thinking, if we're suffering from from population shortage here in South Korea, if the country is dropping in population numbers, um, then then there should be a lot more jobs opening up. But that's not the case, unless that's going to
Well,
happen over the next decade or so. Yeah.
well, Jack, yeah, I think it's the lag effect. Like I think the thing now is that it's aging.
Mm.
Like like on a demographic level. So you got to think like macro.
So within the next 10
Basic.
years, there's going to be like half the population, the working population is just going to disappear, and all the kids that have graduated will just not be. There won't be enough people to to fill all the places that are opening up.
Well, in theory, but like what's happened in Western countries, and I feel like the effect was 10 to 15 years ago. It's kind of ahead of Korea. Is that the baby boomers just didn't walk out of their jobs on time? Like
Mm.
they stuck around, and so that put the pressure on the 20-something-year-olds because now we had 65 to 7-year-olds still working.
Mm.
Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. The Pundit Professor says the PPP, Alaric. I'll just call you Alaric if you don't mind by name. We all know who you are. Exactly. So some go to graduate schools and are trying to ride out this trend. So I guess you mean like the students who are graduating and are not able to find jobs, they move on to grad school and to continue studying. Um, and he says the
But
current. Go ahead.
well, I just feel like this is not a Korean problem. This is like a
Mm.
universal problem. And sure, we all know about the people who extend their education because the prospects aren't looking good. Like that's happening in Canada and America right now. There's a general trend of like, all the good paying jobs, they're kind of like getting, they're disappearing. Like we're,
Mm.
we're getting like we're getting like record GDP and profits, but it's in like Uber, which employs like 50 people, and it's
Yeah,
like, okay,
right.
this is what's happening.
From like 3 companies worldwide.
So I mean, Korea's gonna have to confront these things. And like, what did I read the other day? Like S&M companies, which is a popular acronym here, which means small and medium businesses, for those who don't know. And it like that last year was a record year for exporting jobs.
Mm.
And it's not just like labor or like factory labor that they're exporting. Like a friend of mine works in fabrication, and he said that a lot of his Korean clients export drafting. Like that's a high skilled. I mean, it's like hours of drafting. Like there's a labor involved, but it's a high skilled job, and
Hmm.
and they do that in the Philippines at like a much lower price.
Okay.
And so like Korea is coming up against the same trends that have affected Western countries, and how they're going to deal with that is going to be interesting.
Mm.
Absolutely. Like the chaebols, like that's a kink that isn't necessarily present in Western economies. You have these chaebol, these super
Dominating economies.
corporations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alaric says, I teach nursing students, and many want to go overseas to work. Big labor expert. Yeah, but I think, well, I don't know. From what I understand, nursing students don't get the love that they would get back home in Canada or the United States. I think nursing occupations or nursing jobs in Canada or the States pay a lot more, and I think the nurses are a lot better trained back home than they are here.
Whoa, shots fired, Jack.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know. I've from what I've seen, I
Sure.
remember my friend was he was studying to be a nurse. Changed courses later, but he would attend fairs, you know, based out of the states, trying to recruit Canadian nurses, and they were paying them ridiculous sums of money. And the reason why these companies were trying to hire nurses from Canada was because um, Canadian um, nurses are apparently some of the best in the field when it comes to training and the training that they're given.
Well, what
Uh,
was it? We were like Canada was one of the main places where Saudi Arabia trained doctors and nurses. Like
uh,
they would send Saudi Arabian nationals to Canadian universities for medicine. It was a whole
mm,
program.
mm,
And then they'd even do their residencies in Canada.
mm.
And then with the whole, I think Trudeau stepped on one of the prince's toes or whatever, and then they pulled all the doctors out of Canada. I think that was the story last year, wasn't it? Anyway, something
Maybe I
like
missed it. Alaric is upset, man. Just accepted, man. Canadians are better. Korean students need to resit the test in the States, Canada, and Australia. These days, the level improved a lot. Yeah, I think Canada's got some kind of I forget what it is exactly. I'm not that very well read on a lot of things, but
Sure.
anybody coming into Canada with any form of medical degree has to be retested. Whether you're a doctor, if you've got your doctoral degree that is outside of Canada, you're gonna have to redo your medical exams, your tests rather, and all that stuff. So I assume it's the same for nurses as well. I didn't see why it wouldn't be different. And I don't remember it was like a weird reason for why that's done.
I don't think it's that weird. I think you need to assure the Canadian population that, the health professionals are up to a certain pedigree. And I'm sure normally they are. Like, it's kind of an annoyance maybe to do the test, but pass it and you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
La di da. So what else, man? It's a difficult topic. I can't follow up, man. I'm so tired. I need a haircut. It's been a week, a tough week, and it's only Monday.
you got the COVID haircut.
I get the COVID haircut, man. It's just like my life revolves around my neighborhood. It's just across the street and back home, across the street, back home. My editing software crapped out last week sometimes, so I can't even edit stuff, and take my mind off of things. So I just keep like watching Netflix videos, which is ridiculous. It's horrible.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap. I've sunk so low, man. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, you're a father, or?
Yeah, I've got a 3.5
good.
year old
I
son.
was like, I'm pretty sure Chris is a dad, but I wasn't 100% sure. So there you go.
I think it was a safe bet based on how we met.
Yeah. So,
I'm just
let's switch gears a little bit and talk, fatherhood in South Korea, ups and downs. I think I saw pros and cons. I think there was something, yeah, pros and cons of being a dad in South Korea.
Well, it's tough to that's a tough proposition because I've only ever been a dad in Canada or in Korea. So
True.
what's
Same
it like
here.
being a dad in Canada? I don't know.
Well, but I guess you could imagine what it was like for your dad, or when you were
No,
a kid back home, I guess, or your family.
no, I know. I'm just um. Well, first of all, I guess like my son was 2 months premature,
Hmm.
so that was kind of like it was in some sense super trying time, and like it's easy to frame that as like a tragedy
Yeah.
in some sense. Um, but of course, the flip side is he pulled through, and then that's a miracle.
Hmm.
And of course, every baby is a miracle.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was kind of a tough start, but and he was born in a hospital about an hour and a half away. So like I live in a mid-sized town. I shouldn't say town. I live in a mid-sized, what would be a North American mid-sized city. It's about 150,000 people,
Hmm.
but it's not as dense as you might expect for Korea.
Hmm.
And so one of the things with that, and just even throughout my son's life, is we don't really go to the hospital that's here in town. My wife assures me it's not up to snuff. So we're always having this commute
Okay.
to go to any kind of health service.
Right.
Like if he's had a cold or something, we'll go in town. But anything more than that, and we've always, well, nowadays we go to Dajeon for any kind of health services. But at the time he was in Chungnam, which is about an hour and a quarter north. So like those first 2 months when he was in the NICU and the incubator, like every day we were driving 2.5 hours
Right.
to see him, and the wife's kind of pumping, and and throughout all that, I guess like I could speak on the health service. Like I think like I think every year there's more and more premature births in Korea.
Hmm.
I've read it, and so they've really got it down, and it's like they really control it. It's not like Wild West kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It isn't like old ladies bumping around. Like it's really kind of a tight
Old
ship.
ladies bunker.
I don't know, like so, that's in Korea. You never know when an old lady's gonna bump into you. So,
It's true.
but not in the NICU. And so, like I have nothing but good things to say about that hospital, and
Mm.
they did an excellent job. So, and then yeah, and yeah, after the premature, he came home, and like I'm lucky because my parents are retired, so like they come out like sometimes 2 times a year to
Mm.
Korea, and we
Nice.
we put we put them up in my house. Like they don't go to a hotel, they stay with us,
Sure.
and so they came out, and it's just such a blessing, such a blessing.
How old is
But
how is your son, right?
yeah,
How old is
he's
he?
he's three he's 3.5 now,
3.5. Yeah.
and so he's just kind of getting a hold of himself.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
for a long time, well, this is a big one, Jack, is the language, right?
Uh-huh.
So expat dads, we want our kids to know English and learn English, but every day they're immersed in Korean.
Sure.
So I was interested how that was all going to play out.
And
So I
how is
kept,
it playing out for you?
well, one of the beauty things, like with Corona, like okay, glass half full stuff.
Yeah, you're stuck at home all the time and get to
So
spend
I
a
was
lot of
home a
time with
lot,
him.
and I was home right at that
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
when he was starting to like figure out how to say stuff. And it was like a 3 month period. So actually, his English is way better than his Korean. To the point now where it's like, moms just only speak Korean with him. Mom, like, don't speak any English with him anymore. And we always
Yeah.
assumed it was going to be the other way.
Yeah.
So, but I can't lie. Like, I'm pleased that he's got a hold of English at 3.5.
Sure.
Like you hear about the challenges. Um, so I think we're in a good spot in that respect. Yeah.
Alaric says, "Hold on, wasn't Jack just throwing shade on nurses here?" Chris is a legend. Woohoo! Hope some of my students were working in the hospital. Glad your son is healthy. I grew up with 3 languages. He will be fine. Yeah. So,
Thanks, Salary.
does your wife speak Korean only to your son, and then you're only on the English side?
Well, that's the aim, but obviously, like when we're together as a family,
Hmm.
uh, it's hybrid, but I would say it's 70% English.
Yeah. Nice.
So we've kind of said, look, my wife, like we say, like we've decided, like she's gotta do the Korean with them.
Hmm.
But he's at daycare. He started daycare when he was 2.
Mm-hmm.
But like complications with the premature stuff is he has pre-asthma, and he's
Hmm.
sort of prone to lung infections and stuff.
Hmm. Right.
So like the first 6 months when he was 2, that he was in the daycare, it was like hell. Like he was sick, like just
All the
sick,
time.
sick, 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 and it was
Yeah.
like hospital, like a couple 3 night stays at the hospital, and like not just a runny nose, like.
Hmm.
So we took him out, and so he only went back like a few months ago, so he's been kind of at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's doing really healthy now, so
Nice.
can't.
It's good. It's good that he's healthy, man. It's very important. Nothing worse than having a sick child, man. It's just painful.
Yeah,
Uh,
I got to give a shout out to Alaric here.
technical
Apologize.
difficulties. Technical difficulties. We'll be right back. Boop.
I apologize for that.
No worries. No worries. You're good.
As
Um.
Jack, my laptop was acting up.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say on the one more thing on the nursing. Back when I was an elementary school teacher here, I broke my finger, and I had to do like 3 night stay at the hospital while they put a pin to set the bone.
I had the same thing done to my finger, man.
Yeah, right at the
Yeah.
one at the end of the digits.
Yeah. Yeah. Pinky.
Mine was my pointer finger,
Okay.
or
Well,
what do you call it,
different finger.
index.
Same idea.
Um, but yeah, like that was a riot. But I mean, there's lots to say about Korean hospitals versus Canadian hospitals.
Oh, sure. Sure. I wasn't. I wasn't trying to bring Korean nurses down, but just overall in terms of like I don't know, education, not education, but maybe practical. Okay, I'll just keep my mouth shut. The pay is a lot better in Canada. Maybe that's what it was.
Because they got stronger unions.
Yeah.
And that's legit. But like the Korean hospital, like you got to bring all your own stuff. You need like
Mm,
your own blanket. You need to that was kind of a shock. It's like you're not going to give me this stuff. It's like, or you paid for it at the end.
right.
But no, it's good. Like he's 3.5 years old now, my son, and
Mm,
this is like this is he's starting to be mobile. Like we can go out, we can play sort of rudimentary sports. He's got friends we can kind of hang out with, and it's become like I don't feel I'm not sure like as a English, like I can't speak Korean that well, and am I limited here as a father? Like, am I missing out? Like, would I have different opportunities with my son in Canada?
right.
And I think of course you would, but like we're doing okay.
So I guess that's kind of thanks for bringing me back to my train of thought. On the whole idea of using two different languages, and there are different schools of thought. I read some of it. I'm sure Alaric probably has read a lot more. Some people say like when you grow up or when children grow up in multi or bilingual environments, um, Alaric says, "Chris, learn Korean." But
I got
when
French, I got English. You
yeah,
know,
plenty,
it's tough.
man. Just one more to go. But it said I read somewhere that, for example, if you're growing up in children growing up in bilingual environments, um, each parent should choose the language that they choose to speak with the child and stick with it. So, like, if your dad is only on English, then you should only use English, not flip flop back and forth between Korean and English. And mom should do the same. And like from my experience, when my daughter was about I don't know, 1.5 and 2, she was starting to pick up language and stuff. I think maybe it was later than that. Probably later than that. I'm just tooting. Um, I found that she was picking up Korean a lot faster than she was picking up English, obviously. And so we were entering this phase of communication where I would ask her stuff in English, she would answer to me in Korean, and I would respond to her back in English, which basically nullified the need for her to respond to me back in English. So she understood English, but she wasn't using it. And I had to train myself to not respond to her Korean answers and basically force her to speak to me in English. And that worked because just the other day, YouTube popped up with a video that I posted years ago. And she was, I don't know, 4 or 5 maybe. And she was like on a little bicycle. Her brother was in a little hitch. They were cruising around the apartment, and her English was great. She was like, "I'm just going here, doing this and doing that," and yeah, it worked. But obviously, like Korean is gonna be number one, no matter what you do. I think, unless you decide to send your kid to like a full time English education environment with English education.
I really appreciated that impression you made. That was
Oh, great!
great.
I aim to please, man, at all times.
Yeah, like yeah, I think that's right. And it's funny, our son now talks about appa mal and omma mal.
Mm,
So which for those non-Korean speakers, he's just saying daddy language, mommy language. And like that wasn't really intentional, but like that's how he associated it. And so he has fun like switching between the words. And he's kind of mischievous, so he'll say a Korean word and then wink at me and say, "That's daddy mal."
yeah,
No, it's not. He's like, "Yes, it is." So he's pretty with it, I would say.
yeah.
And yeah, and he's kind of a chatty guy. So I think that's one of the beauty things. Like
Mm,
every kid's different. But like my
true.
son seems to just have this like incredible desire to say what's on his mind. And so like come hell or high water, it's coming out.
Yeah.
Like so that's been a boon to his language acquisition.
Yeah, Alaric says, I guess the rule is more for parents to remember, like one person speaks one language. But he also says, a monolingual child will learn 10 words when a bilingual learns 7, But in the bilingual case, that is 7 per language. So kids actually learn more words overall. And I guess like I've heard cases like that where expat dads were enraged at some goofy feedback from their homeroom teachers saying, "Oh, your child's got some learning deficiency because he's not picking up the language as like other kids." Meanwhile, the kids growing up in a bilingual environment, right? And so kids from bilingual environments usually are a little bit slower initially, but then they reach a threshold, I guess, or whatever, and the language, both of them kind of explode, and they tend to be a lot more versed and obviously, like when your brain language is not just spoken, right? There's a lot more to a language than just speaking it. And so kids growing up in bilingual environments or multilingual environments, their brains are wired differently and they think differently, I think, which kind of puts them at a huge advantage over a lot of the kids in South Korea. Not all, obviously, but I think
I
those that
think
are in South Korea and anywhere else, I think kids growing up in like single language environments.
I think it's even more nuanced than that. I think language has primacy, but like there are other kinds of languages. So like learning how to read music, I
Mm.
think it has a similar kind of like, and it's a different language. It
Hmm.
becomes a different way to look at the world, and it just, makes a more open, sort of fertile mind. So like I think learning music, obviously learning 2, 3 languages, really getting a grasp of mathematics, it kind of has a similar effect.
Hmm.
I truly believe. Like I'm not like obviously I'm prejudiced because I'm an English literature guy, and
Hmm.
I'm all about like the written word, and that's moving forward. That's a big like I kind of want to get my kid on like literacy early,
Hmm.
but I'm not like a tiger dad, like tiger mom. I'm not like he's
Get
gonna
to it.
be a sign. Like I don't want him to be some hyper successful guy. I just fully believe that I don't think it's gonna hurt him, and I think early literacy is just like a key.
Yeah, you might need
So
to
many
start
doors.
early or bribe. The one thing I did with my kids is I started to reading to them from early on. So they like instinctively when they're bored or they're sitting around they will pick up a book. They wake up, first thing they do is read a book. They sit at the table, they eat, they read books, man. Instead of watching it phones, they read books. Mind you, that was my other question that's coming up. But before I get to it, Alaric is saying neolinguistics models show multilingualism makes more adaptive people. So, Alaric, I guess on that point, what Chris just mentioned, would languages like reading music or I guess maybe even sign language. I always wondered about that sign language. Would that fall under the category of linguistics of multilingualism rather? I'm curious actually. Being able to read music, does that fall into a language category? Chris
He's
is
got
up.
me.
He
He's
says
got my back.
you're 200% correct, man. So there you go. There's your answer.
He's paying me back for the nurse stuff.
Yeah, sign. No, no, no. He's on your side. I think he's gonna pay me back for it later. Sign language is totally a language. Yeah, sure. But I guess when I was younger, um I had an opportunity to work in an environment with what's the politically correct term? Deaf mute people, people without hearing and without the ability to speak.
Be
And
careful now.
sorry, yeah, yeah.
No, I mean
And
the medical term is deafness. They
okay,
were deaf.
yeah, um, and uh, and so I was really excited. Like I was in my I think third or fourth year of psychology, and I was super excited. I went for the interview, and I was like, man, this is cool. It's like it's very interesting. Um, but I was trying to like understand how sign language would fall into that category of vocal linguistics, I guess back then. But yeah.
I think the distinguishing part would be like communication, and
Hmm.
like there's a whole host of things going on in your brain that has to do with communication, and the sort of vocal part isn't necessarily uh, like I don't see a distinction, man. I think sign
Mm,
language as a mode of communication must be doing analogous things in the brain
right.
as any spoken language. I
Yeah.
would assume.
Yeah, that's what Alex says too. Sign language is still has grammar and vocabulary, so it counts as a full language. And I guess prior to our spoken language, we'd make noises and grunt and do all kinds of weird stuff and still communicate, right?
Absolutely,
And we still do it.
absolutely. Well, speak for yourself, Jack.
I do it all the time, especially in my classrooms, man. Uh,
So, can I anticipate your next question? Technology in the house?
yes,
Yeah, that's
so in tune, man. So in tune. See, that's exactly it. So that was my next question. Yes. Um, how do you feel about that? Because like my daughter is now going on 11. I guess she'll be 11 in August. Full blown Western. My son
wow.
is like 2.5 years younger. Just turned today. What is it? 7, 8. And I've been struggling. Hey, J Vlog is in the house. What's up, J Vlog? And um, I've been trying to be very strict with minimizing exposure to technology, particularly phones. And so they've got their phones, but I installed, Google whatever Family Link, and they only get like 30 minutes a day on their phone, and they use all of it on playing games. And if they had more time, they would be using all of that time doing just that. Because I mean, they're little, they're at home all the time. They never make phone calls. Their aunt calls them sometimes. They call them, but so I had to limit that, and I made a deal with them. Like my daughter wanted to get a Nintendo Switch, and I said, "You read 100 books in English, and I will get you a Nintendo Switch." And then my brother-in-law jumped the gun on me, that son of a gun, and freaking went out and bought her a Nintendo Switch ahead of time. But I was still able to weasel my way out of it and say, I told her, you don't get to play it until you finish reading your 100 books in English. So they're completing that assignment now, like 3 years later, I think.
Well, Jack, I think like um it's laudable the amount of control you've, and I don't mean that negatively, that you managed to keep on the situation, because I think it gets away
Yeah,
on a lot of parents. Like like peer pressure and all the things.
yeah, it's cool. And so, like,
Well,
what's your take on that?
well, obviously, Jack, I'm in a much different situation because you have teenage kids, and like that's a whole host of different and more complicated problems.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of at the start of that road, and
the journey.
so like yeah, so like we have obviously, like with a young guy, we have a lot more control,
Mm,
and but like part of well, so one of the things was he was often sick, and he had to get like these sort of ventilator medicines, and he had to
mm,
not squirm, and so we did lean on screens,
yeah,
for like in doses, like even when he was like 2.5, because we had to get the medicine in him, and it was, and so someone will say you should have tried harder and
mm,
whatever, but like that's the way we went, and so he does get little doses, but my thing is like I'm not against technology per se.
mm-hmm.
I think there's like time and place.
Absolutely.
And remember, my perspective is a 3.5-year-old,
Yeah.
and so some people are gonna be like, there should be none,
Mm,
and like I can totally see it, and I think that's admirable. But like he's watching mom and dad,
mm,
and we got screens all over the damn house.
right.
Sorry, excuse me, and we got like our phones out all
Yeah.
the time, and so like I'm not gonna like tell him no for you, yes for me. So,
Right.
but I'm gonna control it. I'm gonna like choose the content, and all that stuff. So like I've seen the kids YouTube stuff, and
Mm,
in my opinion, it's just like dopamine hits. It's like empty. There's never a narrative. It's
Right.
just like
Yeah.
excitement. And I think that's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that's garbage. I'm sure there's good stuff on YouTube, but like most of the stuff that the algorithm is finding for the kid, it's like garbage.
Mm.
So we don't do that. Like, there was a time when we had that on there, but I got rid of that. So 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 anyway, so we got like a Playmobil thing, and that's just entertainment. But we've got a whole host of like, basically they're like storybooks that like play out on the screen. And so we bought like a several $100 sort of like program that has like all these books and storybooks and stuff.
Yeah.
And like we'll put that on these days um when the situation demands it.
Mm.
But other than that, like we don't have a TV in the house.
Really?
Yeah.
You're one of
But
those
like,
parents. Wow, that's
well,
awesome. I admire that, man. Time and time again, I hear my students say, like, I don't have a TV. I'm like, what? That's amazing. If it was up to me, our TV would be out in the trash. It's my wife. Like, we got a TV actually when she was pregnant, you know, because she spent a lot of time on her side on the couch. She's like, I need to look at something. I'm like, just pick up a book, man. But, you know, easier said than done. She was the one stuck at home all day, basically, and just tired. She would eat and sleep, and never gaining any weight either, right?
I mean, happy wife, happy life, right,
Yeah,
Jack?
exactly. So we got the TV, and it's been in the house ever since. Literally, the same. We've got the same TV we got in 2010. Can you believe it? It's a 11-year-old TV. Not bad.
Well, then you're doing all right. You're not wasting money and
No.
but well, the TV thing, kind of like you, like Korean TV really doesn't hold anything for me.
Yeah.
But saying that we have no TV is like kind of disingenuous because like I'm watching Netflix on my phone, and we have like a Galaxy Tab, and like you know, saying we have no TV doesn't really mean much. There's still screens.
Sure. I guess it
all
just
around.
depends on how you use them, right? Like, so let me just read up because Alaric left a bunch of messages here. Some funny stuff. Tech destroys young brains. More studies coming out on this. Books, and more books. When I was young, my Nintendo was called Tolkien.
Mine was Dragonlance, Alaric.
When I was a kid, I didn't have a Nintendo. We had computer Ataris, man, 500. You remember those, Atari?
Yeah, that was just before. I had a Nintendo. I think Grandma got me a Nintendo.
Yeah, I think Atari was pre-Nintendo even. Maybe. What else? I think your approach is good, Chris. Less is more, but it's obviously hard to avoid outright. Absolutely. Cultivating a love for reading is the key. Used books. Lol. Dragon Lens. My Atari was called the Garden. There you go, Atari. Yeah.
I recently read this way to, like, when the show's over or like the book is finished on his pad or whatever.
Yeah.
There's always sort of an anxious moment. Like, he's pretty good at it, but like sometimes, you know, he's kind of getting stuck. Like, he gets ripped back to reality.
Yeah.
And you can see that like there's a change, and that's troubling to see.
Yeah. I've noticed that with my kids too. Sometimes there's like a change in behavior.
Yeah. So I read this article that was saying like how to ease that transition. Now this is kind of fun. Like, this is so silly, right? Like, this is the state of society in 2021, that we need to like have strategies on how to unglue ourselves from our technology. So having said that, which appalls me, there are good things like getting down on his level and asking him about what he just watched is a way, or like not just yanking it away from him, but kind of try and swoop in the last minute of the of the allotted time, and like sitting with him for the last minute, and being like, what's that? What's this? What's going on? What did that character want? You know, what happened in the end? And to me, if that feels good, that feels like teaching books.
Mm.
kid to university. Like, that feels like a teaching moment,
Yeah.
and kind of testing what he understood, and critical, nascent critical analysis.
Mm.
So that's one way that but I'm not there all the time. But that's when I
Sure.
am. That's one thing I try and do.
Yeah, personally, like I'm more of a movie goer, to be honest with you. Like I grew up watching movies, and not on, not a lot. Like we'd go to the movies with my parents, once in the blue moon. There was nothing on television. We had like two shitty channels. This was like communist Poland, man. So there was, both of them were state-run channels, and there was nothing on. So sorry.
So that was in Poland. So what
Yeah.
movies were you getting a hold of?
So
Like, was it Hollywood?
well, I grew up on like Star Wars, the Alien trilogies, Indiana Jones, man, all these. So like I feed them to my kids now, and they're brilliant movies. I mean, to this day, I've probably seen Star Wars and Indiana Jones over 100 times each one of them. And when I played
Awesome.
them to my kids now, they really enjoyed those movies. Like they got into them the way I did get into them when I was a kid. So. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, like I think movies are, and again, you got to be selective and see, that it's not too smutty, or no, like you said, that it has a storyline, it's got some kind of point, and not
Yeah.
too much of it.
Well,
But
that's something to look forward to, like watching movies and stuff. I'm looking forward to that with my son, because, like,
yeah,
yeah.
we make popcorn. Sometimes I'll make it. Sometimes I throw in a bag in the microwave and make popcorn. My kids are really looking forward to that. Like, oh, we're gonna watch a movie on Saturday evening. Like, sure, popcorn. Yes, all right. So we've got like a little evening night with popcorn and stuff, watching oldies.
Yeah, and just the idea that you can have this sort of like curated hit list of like all the glorious moments of your childhood or your
Yes,
life, and you can share that.
I'm trying to get them
Yes.
to watch Back to the Future. We watched, I think, one. They weren't really getting into it too much. I think they were still a little bit little, so maybe we have to rewatch that again sometime soon.
I wonder, like, how dated. Like, some of them are timeless, but maybe some of them don't quite hit. It's
Yeah,
just too dated.
yeah.
I
Back
don't
to the
know.
Future may be one of those. Indiana Jones flew, like they loved it, man. They totally got into it. Particularly the which one is it? The Temple of Doom. There's that little Chinese kid, right? The car driver, man. My kids loved him. He's like, oh, look at that kid. He's driving a car.
Sounds like grandma's cookies.
It was good fun.
Love that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the most recent movie we watched was the what was it? The Christmas Chronicles. That was a good film.
Oh, okay.
Wydanie Polskie, Indiana Jones, and the Evil Capitalists. Yeah, that's the title, man. The Evil Capitalists. Back to the Future might just be like the present now. Haha. Yeah. Which part? I don't know, man. We're living in a very strange time, I think. Uh, Dude, I was just thinking about it today. Like this time, so the first time Corona hit, we were closed down for 2 months. February, March, closed. I think we opened up midway through February. Sorry, midway through March, and we were teaching. I was teaching online, some of our students. So basically, the entire month of February, it was like a forced vacation. It was hard on us economically, but personally, I loved spending the time with the kids, and I think my wife enjoyed the free time too, even though it kicked us in the you know in the
No,
keister
trust
hard.
me.
But this time around, we were closed down for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Just this past month, what was it? The December, yeah, when another wave hit us. But it wasn't as restful. Like within a week, we were online, and it was just online teaching. And after like 2 or 3 weeks of teaching online, man, oh, I just couldn't do it anymore. So crises are best when they're sudden and unplanned, man. When they're repetitive, they just become just as tiring and boring as anything else.
That's a good insight, Jack. I mean, I have a similar, basically the same experience. Although we only closed for a month back in last year, but yeah, those Zoom lessons, man, it was killing me.
Yeah,
And yeah, I look back home, like in Canada, and like these teachers, they'll have like 26 like grade 2-year olds on Zoom, and it's like, what the? How is that even possible?
Have you seen the memes circulating around Facebook, man?
There's always a steady stream of memes, Jack.
There's
Can you be
yeah,
specific?
in regards to the present COVID, but there's one I just saw today, and it was just like a circle of people sitting, and they looked like they were, I don't know, from the 40s or 30s, and they were, you know, trying to talk to ghosts, and the headings were like, uh, Elizabeth, we can hear that there's somebody there. Elizabeth, is that you? Can you hear us? We can't hear you. It's like, it's like communicating with somebody on Zoom right now. Like, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Let me hear you. Turn on your volume. Yeah.
My buddy back home, he has his boys in grade 2. Yeah, grade 2, and he said like he was listening in, like
Mm.
his kid was in the living room, and it's just like an hour of like one kid's like, I gotta go pee, and it's like, where's my duotang? I don't know where my duotang is, and then like some other kid's like, Dad, I need
Yeah.
this, I need
Right.
that.
Right. Exactly.
Somehow, I really feel like it's such a psychological impact. Um, like I don't know, man, the downstream effects of this year on, is particularly teenagers. Like who knows, man? Like
Yeah.
who knows the downstream effects? But I think it's gonna be pretty bad.
Yeah. I think I read an article somewhere in the States. They were already recording lower test results for the kids coming back due to the absences, man.
I think it's like it's never gonna happen.
Mm.
But what's required is sort of something in the education realm has to just sort of like adapt, and it not I don't think the way like the Zoom lessons is not adapting. Like it needs to be something else. Like it needs to be, but like mass education, it's a huge undertaking. And
Mm.
the institution of K through 12, like it's vested, it's slow moving, it's there's tons of money being poured into it, and it's just like a behemoth,
Yeah.
and it's not going to change easily. And I don't even know how it should change. But like honestly, if I had like an 8, 9, 10-year old, and maybe not in the Korean context, but in the Canadian context, I would
Mm.
be strongly looking at homeschooling.
Yeah.
Like at this point, like you might as well just take the leap.
Alaric's making us just left a message saying education is becoming swamped by ideology and poor teaching. Modern education is designed to make drones. Yeah, um, interesting person I just saw on YouTube. A young woman. She must be in her, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, I think. She's well, she says she's a millionaire, but she made a point something of like she compared education to the workplace, right? Kids come in, they're given an assignment, they do their assignment, and they're rewarded for completing the assignment, which is basically what you do in a work environment, right? Like you go to work, you have an assignment, you complete the assignment, and then at the end of the completion of the assignment, once you complete the assignment, you get rewarded, you get your paycheck or whatever.
And
Uh,
time, deadlines, when to come. You got to
yeah,
come a certain time, go home a certain time.
exactly. So all of that, I mean, that's all included in schools, right? You have to be on time. If you're not, you're in trouble. Teachers will freaking punish you. You get a bad grade or whatever, right? There's always repercussions. And so, yeah, she basically made the exact same point, that perhaps, the modern education system that we have is not the best, and it's not there to educate people. It's there to create, like Alaric said, drones, or to make worker ants, worker bees. You go through the
But
movements, you go through the system, and then you're thrown into factories or whatever employment.
but Jack, like once again, there's always a nuance. Like
Mm.
it's not necessarily 100% bad that
Sure.
you're acclimatizing future adults to have adult jobs.
Well, yeah,
Like
obviously not, because I mean, not everybody turns out that way, right? But I think plenty
no,
do.
no, and then but like we've progressed. Like it's
Hmm.
21, it's 21st century.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, we hear about like the frontiers of medicine, like everything's going to be personalized, and like we have infinite computing, so we can get everything just right for every individual. Well, where's the education picture? Like not everyone's going to be factory worker. And also, not everyone, like students have different needs. They have different learning styles.
Mm,
So like all of this needs to be addressed in some new way.
right.
I have a feeling,
Sure.
but it's a monument. I'm not gonna figure it out, but like something's gotta happen.
I think the answer is blockchain and Bitcoin, man.
This is what all you techies say. Blockchain will solve everything.
It will solve everything, man. Don't worry.
Yeah, as
It'll
soon
be-
as we get Kurzweil's singularity, then I'm sure blockchain will figure it all out.
Yeah, there you go. Alaric says he's got a paper coming out on this in March. Universities have
Interesting.
become, yeah, even if universities have become centers of higher indoctrination, not higher education. For those who don't know, Alaric is on LinkedIn. You can find him, I think, and he posts all of his work there. So, and also videos. Sometimes I read it. They're interesting. He's a smart dude. Yeah. Chris, so like we're
Yes.
coming, it's past 1 hour. So let me ask you like one more question. What's your vision? Like where are you going in life? What are your plans further on, I guess, in your career, in your work, in your gyeoshipseo and so on?
Right. Well, I've sort of had a 4 to 5 year plan that just keeps like getting pushed back. So like
Right.
I'm not sure like um but like I've always got this this vision of moving back to Canada
Hmm.
and buying some rural property with some acres and setting up kind of like a hobby farm and then finding ways to make that possible. So there's got to be ways to monetize it or to what am I going to do? So like one of the things with the pandemic is it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to like online teaching. Like I know we've been slamming it the last 20 minutes, but like, would it be possible for me to live in Canada
Right.
and have some sort of online curriculum that I manage and administer?
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was, you know, some portion of what I do now, it would still be income that could make that rural property work. So
Right.
like this kind of, that was one thing. And yeah, but like, I mean, I just bought a house this month
Mm.
in Korea.
Yeah.
So is it a 4 to 5 year plan anymore? I think it's going to get pushed back some more. But like, that's kind of like, I don't want to teach forever. I'm not really business minded. I'm not interested in, for example, going your route, which is sort of like expanding and sort of, and, you know, kind of moving into a more, you know, like however you want to, you know, like managerial or whatever. Like I'm not interested in business.
Yeah.
What I am interested in is sort of semi-retiring
Right.
and finding ways to make that work.
Right.
So that's the dream.
Yeah. That is the dream, I think, for most of us. That's actually my dream too. The reason why I'm kind of, you know, working on this project of ours is so hopefully I can step back from teaching, focus more on other things, and you know, semi-retire from teaching and do other stuff.
Yeah. Well, you got this 100 deep podcast. Who knows
Yeah,
where this will take?
dude, 200 more, 2 more years, and we'll be flying. We'll be up to monetization finally. Alaric says you can never leave, Chris. David Tizard posted a quote just recently. It's like Korea's like Hotel California, and I can't remember it, man. It was a brilliant quote. It made me laugh.
You guys are depressing me here. Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you can,
oh
you know,
man.
it's the saying, you can take the Korean out of Korea, but not Korea out of the Korean, right? I think the point he was making is that people, it doesn't matter, whatever, okay. You cannot leave, you're stuck here forever, heart and
Yeah,
soul.
no,
And besides, your wife is Korean, your son's Korean, so whether you like it or not, man, this is your second home, dude.
no, but I totally I should be clear. Like I enjoy my life in Korea, and I'm very proud that like my son can carry this Korean identity with him throughout his life. I think it's a really, you know, unique and cool thing, and And absolutely. And like, for example, in some future where I'm living in Canada, I'm sure my wife's coming out to Korea like multiple times,
Yeah.
once a year. So it's going to be good. Like, but like I feel like the business and this whole sort of like road this last 6 years,
Yeah.
it's always been a vehicle to get me back to Canada.
Right.
And so that's how I've framed it. And it's been how I've kept my motivation going.
But I think
And
you're still running on diesel. You gotta upgrade to electrical, man, because the time frame is expanding. You said yourself, so.
well, yeah, just I mean, you're like, yeah, we can save that much, and then it's
Yeah.
6 months later, you're like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, and all the prices gone up, man. And Alaric is bombarded, man. Too bad you don't see the chats, man. There's like some comments from Alaric, yeah. Don't be depressed, Chris. Every door you open leads to Korea.
I opened the chat. I can see him.
Okay. All roads lead to Pennsylvania. Oh, to the peninsula. Maybe they lead to Pennsylvania. Who knows? That's a strange way of spelling Korea. What? Korea. I've misspelled Korea. I don't know where you're getting that. I've misspelled Korea before. Literally, in one of my videos, I spelled it with Kroea. Bummer. Anywho.
He's cursing me.
Yeah.
Alaric, that's a curse. Don't put that on me. Don't put that on me, man. I'm getting out.
All right. We're going to cut it short. Oh, not cut it short. We're going to cut it long. We'll stop here, man, I think.
Well, listen, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and,
Chris, thanks for coming on, man.
It's an honor to be on your 100th.
It was great to have you here, man. It's like a lot of good times and insights, man. Very, very interesting. I don't get to talk to a lot of Canadians, not very often. I work with one part-time. He swings by our school, and we see each other in passing because he's got classes to do, and and I'm a I don't know, I'm turning into a hobbit.
You got to get out.
Yeah, I do. You just need to find
Get a haircut.
Yeah. Well, whenever I get the time, I hit the mountains, man. I skip out and I climb mountains, and that's my escape route, man, from reality.
Good man.
All right. Okay, Chris. Again, thanks a lot for coming and agreeing to do this craziness, and maybe we can hook up again sometime, yo.
Yeah, love it. Say good night, chat. It was nice to have you guys here, Alaric, JVlog, and whoever else. There was another guy.
That was you, I think, on your second account.
All right, Jack.
All right, man.
Good night.
Take care. Have a good night. Alrighty. There you go. Chris is gone. Good man. Fun talking to him. Insightful, intelligent. I like that, man. I like when people are smarter than me, because I'm stupid as a shoe. So people coming in with insight is exactly what I'm looking for this blog, for this podcast. And so next week, believe it or not, man, here's a surprise. You might like it. I have managed to get Dave Sperling to agree to come on the podcast. You know, the guy who started up Dave's ESL Cafe? Yeah. I don't know how that happened. I messaged him a couple of times. And so if everything goes, and I think everything might go, he's going to be here next week talking to me. Yeah, Dave's ESL Cafe, Dave Sperling. Coming on, it's going to be next Monday, but it will be a pre-recorded session because Dave is based in California, which obviously puts us at a kind of a timely disadvantage when it comes to time zones and stuff. So it's going to be a pre-recorded session. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask him, I'd suggest head over to the Live in Korea group on Facebook. I will post the link and just drop a question that you have, and I'm going to ask him in the pre-recorded session, and that's going to be played. It's not streamed, I guess, anymore, but it's going to be streaming live, pre-recorded next Monday at the same time on the same place. Yeah, I will advertise that. I'm gonna post that up. You mean like paid advertising? Maybe I could. I just gotta make sure that it's happening. So I've been talking to Dave and I think we've agreed on the time, so it's happening. No, no. Yeah, I would advertise it in the usual ways that I do. Yeah, spread the word and all that stuff. Facebook posts are good enough. Yeah, I agree. Until the time that this channel becomes monetized, I'm keeping it low on the budget. Yo. All right, guys. Gents, thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for engaging. Alrik, it was a pleasure to have you here. J-Vlog, thanks, man, for stopping by. Sorry if I didn't address all the questions. Again, make sure, J-Vlog, stop by. If you want to ask Dave some questions, stop by the Living Korea page. No, sorry, Living Korea group, because the page is kind of different. But the Living Korea group, just swing by. I'm going to post a link so you can ask questions and all that stuff. And I'm going to advertise it, so hopefully you'll see it on there too. So yeah, today, man, my eyesight's going. 25th of January is almost at its end, and so is this podcast. So I'll see you guys next week, same place, same time. It should be fun. Bye bye.